Number 13, 2022.
911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the light, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
What if I told you that on the night 4 young people lost their lives in a quiet college town in Idaho, the 2 people who were in that same house, sleeping just 1 floor below, had absolutely no idea what had already happened, and that the person responsible had already walked out the door, vanished into the darkness, and within weeks was sitting calmly in a car beside his father while a police officer pulled them over on highway and then let them go without a second thought? What if I told you that the man accused of taking those 4 lives had spent years studying the exact science of criminal behavior, that he had earned 2 degrees in psychology, a master's in criminal justice, and was enrolled in a doctoral program at a university less than 8 miles from the house where those 4 people were killed? What if I told you that after nearly 3 years of investigation, of legal hearings, of families sitting in courtrooms week after week waiting for something that resembled justice, when it was finally his turn to speak, when the families were right there in that room, when the world was watching, he said nothing, not a single word. He sat in an orange prison jumpsuit, and he was silent. And here's the question that I need you to carry with you for the rest of this video. We know what happened. We know who did it. He confessed. He pleaded guilty. But after everything, after 3 years, after thousands of tips and millions of dollars of investigation, after DNA evidence and phone records and surveillance footage, nobody knows why. Not the investigators, not the prosecutors, not the families. And perhaps most troubling of all, nobody is entirely sure that even Bryan Kohberger himself could give you an answer that would make sense. Welcome to Dark Trail Files. What you are about to hear is not just a true crime story. It is a story about voices. The voice on a 911 call that did not yet understand what it was reporting. The voice of a surviving roommate who stood frozen in a hallway and carried that image for 3 years before she finally spoke. The voices of fathers and mothers and sisters who stood before a courtroom and refused to let their loved ones be reduced to case numbers. And the deliberate, calculated silence of the man at the center of all of it. Every detail in this story is real. And none of it is simple. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something directly. If you're the kind of person who cannot walk away from a story until you fully understand it, if you find yourself up at midnight, unable to stop thinking about a case, needing every detail, every layer, every question that the headlines missed, then this channel was made for you. Dark Trail Files goes deeper than the breaking news. We follow the evidence, the emotions, and the moments that get left behind when a story becomes too big and moves too fast. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. Because the truth in cases like this one does not arrive all at once. It comes in pieces, and we will be here for every single one. Subscribe to Dark Trail Files. The truth always leaves a trail. It was a Saturday night in November 2022. In the small college town of Moscow, Idaho, everything looked exactly the way a Saturday night in a college town is supposed to look. Students were at bars, at restaurants, at house parties. There was laughter. There was noise. There was the ordinary, unremarkable sound of young people living their lives without any awareness that something was already in motion nearby. Moscow, Idaho is not a large place. It is a town of roughly 25,000 people, sitting in the rolling hills of the Idaho Panhandle. It is the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked, where neighbors know each other's names, where the biggest local news on any given weekend is usually about a football game or a campus event. The last recorded murder in the town had been in 2015. 7 years of quiet. 7 years where parents could send their children to the University of Idaho without a particular dread about their safety. Moscow was supposed to be the kind of place where the worst things happen somewhere else. The 4 students at the center of this story were Kaylee Goncalves, 21 years old, and Madison Mogan, also 21. Kaylee and Maddie have been best friends since the 6th grade. That is a decade of friendship. That is the kind of friendship built not on convenience, but on genuine, repeated choice. They had grown up together, ended up at the same university, and lived together in an off-campus house on King Road. On the night of November 12th, the two of them went out together, visiting spots around town before a private car dropped them back at the house on King Road at approximately 1:56 in the morning. Their housemates included Xana Kernadle, 20 years old, and Xana's boyfriend Ethan Chapin, also 20, who was staying over that night. Ethan was a freshman. His family would later describe him as someone who brought a lightness and humor to every room he walked into. The kind of person who never took himself too seriously, who made other people feel at ease just by being present. Xana and Ethan had arrived back at the house at around 1:45 in the morning. Records show that at 4 o'clock that same morning, Xana received a DoorDash delivery. 12 minutes after that, she was using TikTok on her phone. She was awake. She was alive. She was a 20-year-old doing exactly what 20-year-olds do in the early hours of the morning after a night out. Somewhere between 4 o'clock and 4:25 that morning, everything ended. The house at 1122 King Road was a 3-story rental property. 2 other roommates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were in the house on the lower floors. They were alive, and for the next several hours, they did not know what had already happened on the floors above them. Not fully. Not yet. The 911 call did not come until 11:58 in the morning, nearly 8 hours after Xana last touched her phone. And when that call finally came in, it did not sound like the discovery of crime. It sounded like confusion, like 2 young women trying to make sense of something that their minds were not yet able to fully process. The caller told the dispatcher that a roommate had passed out from drinking and would not wake up. And then, in the middle of that call, a second detail emerged. Someone had been in the house the night before. Someone they did not recognize. Listen to that confusion, because behind it was a crime scene that would eventually shock the entire country.
Number 13, 2022.
911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the light, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah.
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, but we gotta go check. But we have to. Is she passed out? What's wrong? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20 years old.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Hey, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
Talk to them, okay? I can't talk to them. They need you to talk to them.
Hello.
Okay. I've already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, we have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
11:59 a.m.
The caller told the dispatcher that Xana had been drinking the night before and was not waking up. That was the explanation their minds reached for first, because that was the one that made sense, the one that fit a Saturday night in a college town. But then, there was a man in the house last night. The roommates had seen someone they did not recognize. Someone wearing a mask. When Moscow police arrived at King Road that morning, what they found could not be processed quickly or easily. Police reports later released by the Moscow Police Department describe a crime scene of extraordinary severity. Officers described finding conditions so significant that initial identification of victims was difficult. For young people who had gone to sleep and never woken up. For a department that had not investigated a homicide in 7 years, this was unlike anything they had ever faced. And within hours, it was unlike anything the country had faced in recent memory either. The story spread quickly. For college students, stabbed to death, no forced entry, no suspect identified, no weapon recovered. 2 surviving roommates who had been in the same building and had not understood what was happening above them. The nation held its breath. Here is the question that haunted investigators from the very first hours of that investigation. There was no forced entry. Someone had walked into that house freely. But who? And why? Why those 4 people? Why that house? Why that specific night? The answers, it would turn out, had been quietly building for months. And the person responsible was not a stranger drifting through Moscow, Idaho. He was living there, teaching there, studying there. He had a degree in psychology. He had a master's in criminal justice. He was pursuing a doctorate at a university less than 8 miles away. And according to surveillance records that investigators would later uncover, his car had been spotted near that house not once or twice, but at least 23 times before the night everything happened. 23 times. Bryan Christopher Kohberger was born on November 21st, 1994, in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. He grew up in the Pocono Mountains region of eastern Pennsylvania, a quiet, somewhat rural area known more for ski resorts and vacation homes than for anything particularly notable. By outward appearance, his early years were unremarkable. He attended Pleasant Valley High School in Broadheadsville, graduated in 2013, briefly enrolled in a technical institute, and then spent time working as a security officer for a local school district before eventually returning to formal education. Over the following years, Kohberger built an academic record that was, by any objective measure, impressive. He earned an associate degree in psychology, then a bachelor's degree in psychology from DeSales University in 2020, then a master's degree in criminal justice from the same institution in 2022. And in the fall of 2022, he enrolled as a doctoral student in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. His research focus was criminal decision-making, the study of why people commit crimes, how they select targets, how they weigh risk against reward. He was, in other words, a man who had spent years studying exactly the kind of crime he would be accused of committing. A fellow teaching assistant at Washington State University later told investigators that Kohberger was very intelligent, but also selfish. That he had a habit of redirecting shared work so that others completed tasks that were his responsibility. That he often wanted to talk about criminal decision-making and burglary-type crimes. And that he talked frequently about wanting a girlfriend, about the difficulty of connecting with people, about the particular loneliness of being new to a program where everyone else already seemed to know each other. That same person also told investigators something that, in hindsight, is impossible to read without a chill. In October and November of 2022, he had noticed injuries on Kohberger's face and hands on at least 2 separate occasions. A large scratch on his face that looked like fingernail marks. Wounds on his knuckles. When asked what happened, Kohberger said he had been in a car accident. There was no documented car accident. Investigators later learned that Kohberger had purchased a fixed-blade knife consistent with the type whose sheath was found at the crime scene. They learned that his phone had pinged in the vicinity of the King Road house at least 12 times between June 2022 and the night of the murders. They learned that surveillance records indicated he had driven past or near that house at least 23 times before. They learned that he had used software to attempt to wipe data from multiple electronic devices before police could recover anything from them. And they found, in his browsing history, searches for Ted Bundy and a search for the Fraser University of Idaho Murders, conducted after the killings had taken place. And yet, despite all of that, investigators never found a single personal connection between Kohberger and any of the 4 victims. No share classes. No social media exchanges. No mutual friends. No documented prior contact of any kind. Moscow police would later state plainly, after sentencing, they wanted to find a link. They used every resource available. They looked exhaustively. They found nothing. So why those 4? Why that house? Why that night? No one knows. After the semester ended in December 2022, Bryan Kohberger did something that, to everyone around him, appeared entirely ordinary. He packed his belongings, got in his white Hyundai Elantra, and drove home to Pennsylvania with his father, Michael Kohberger, to spend the holidays with his family. The drive from Pullman, Washington to the Pocono Mountains is approximately 2,800 miles. Students make drives like this all the time when a semester ends. What made this particular drive different is what investigators would eventually understand about who was behind the wheel. On December 15th, 2022, roughly a month after the murders and more than 2 weeks before his arrest, Kohberger and his father were pulled over by law enforcement. Not once, twice, on the same morning. In Indiana, at 10:41 in the morning, a deputy with the Hancock County Sheriff's Office stopped the car for following another vehicle too closely. The officer spoke briefly with the 2 men. Kohberger sat in the driver's seat. His father sat in the passenger seat. The stop was brief, unremarkable. No ticket, released with a verbal warning. 9 minutes later, an Indiana State Police trooper pulled them over again on the same stretch of interstate for the same reason. In the body cam footage from this second stop, the trooper asked where they were headed. Kohberger's father said they were coming from Washington State University, heading to the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. He explained that they were both, in his words, slightly punchy from driving for hours and hours. During the conversation, the topic of a separate incident came up, a Washington State University SWAT standoff that had taken place that same morning. When it was described as a mass shooting, Kohberger interjected calmly and said they did not know about that they had not been there for it. The officer released them with a verbal warning. At the time, Moscow police had publicly announced they were looking for a white Hyundai Elantra near the crime scene. But specific plate information and a confirmed model year had not been released. 2 officers had now stopped the man who would eventually confess to those 4 murders, and both times they had let him go. Here is the body cam footage from one of those stops. Everything about it looks routine. A tired father and son on a long road trip. An officer doing his job. No alarms. No recognition. No indication that either man in that car is anything other than what they appear to be. Watch it knowing what we know now. Because that contrast between how ordinary it looks and what we have since learned is one of the most unsettling moments in this entire case.
I am Officer Loangus. Stops being audio and video recorded. I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah,
so
I was behind you the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because if the light turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you run the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep. Let me just get this for you out.
You what?
I'm just going to get this out for you.
Okay.
Would you explain that to me a little bit further? So in Pennsylvania, when you're stuck in the intersection, you have to make the left. So what would the appropriate thing for me to have done?
You're not supposed to block an intersection like that in Washington, so just by you blocking the intersection, that's technically a ticketable violation, and then you're running a red light, so it's another ticketable offense. So you're not supposed to proceed into the intersection until you can go, because a lot of people do what you just did, right? Is like you're sitting in the intersection waiting, and then turns, and then you're blocking, so.
Yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding, because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn. So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through.
Oh.
Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, like right before I made the turn, there was someone who made a right. And they didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go, so you don't get stuck. Let's see.
But in that situation, the best thing to do then would be back up. And not...
I don't know if there's a best thing to do in that situation, because you're either going to back up into somebody, or you're going to run a red light. So, or you'll be sitting in an intersection. There's not really a great option there.
Yeah, I was just sliding into the crosswalk, so... Where I'm from Pennsylvania, we actually don't have, like, crosswalks.
Oh,
so even if you're kind of slightly... There's a little bit more leeway as well. Like, there are a few lines. Like, there's one white line, and there's another one. Like, there's, like a certain margin from which you can actually kind of put your vehicle, place your vehicle.
Yeah, so I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that. Proceeding through when you don't, when you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage, I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to...
Oh, no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah. One second. That looks good on a Hyundai. I don't see Pennsylvania registration like at all. Okay, let's see. Okay. So I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone unless you can clearly just clear it right away.
Okay.
So
then basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time, but
it never even occurred to me that was actually something wrong. But well, except for the fact that I was blocking the crosswalk, which is what I went through.
And states vary from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
I'm actually just from a very rural area, so we just don't have crosswalks.
Oh.
Unless I visit an area where there are crosswalks, and then it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
I do apologize if I was asking you too many questions about the law. I wasn't trying to
No, not at all. Like I understand you're not from here, so if you don't, a lot of people don't know a bunch of laws. Like I only know it because this is what I do, but yeah. If you're ever curious on any more laws, just RCW, and they can be hard to read because it's in like legal language, but hope that helps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hello. How y'all doing? Good. Take your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on the van, man. He's right up on the back of that van. You're over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU. And
what's WSU?
University, basically. It's up there in that is SWAT team area.
So I'm having a hard time reading because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going there? Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
We're planning to let you drive hours.
Hours, days.
Drive.
Okay.
The investigation that would eventually lead to Kohberger's arrest was one of the most intensive in recent American history. Within 6 weeks of the murders, law enforcement had received over 15,000 tips. The FBI was involved. Digital forensics teams were working constantly. And the break in the case came from DNA. A knife sheath had been found at the crime scene, near one of the victims. The DNA profile developed from that sheath did not match anyone in the FBI's criminal database. So investigators turned to a technique called investigative genetic genealogy, running that DNA profile against publicly available ancestry databases to develop a list of potential family matches. That process eventually pointed toward Kohberger's family in Pennsylvania. Investigators then collected DNA from trash discarded at the Kohberger family home and compared it. It matched the DNA on the sheath. On December 30th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home in Chestnut Hill Township, Monroe County, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania State Police and the FBI made the arrest. When they entered the home, they found Kohberger in the kitchen, dressed in a shirt and shorts, wearing examination gloves, and placing trash in his separate Ziploc bags. He was taken into custody. At the Pennsylvania State Police barracks, investigators spoke with him briefly. He was calm. He engaged in small talk. He told one of the investigators that he looked familiar. He said he was worried about his parents and his dog. And when the questions began to move toward the reason he was sitting in that room, he asked for a lawyer. The interview ended. On January 4th, 2023, he was extradited to Idaho. The first formal court appearance after extradition was the moment that transformed Bryan Kohberger from a name in a headline into a visible presence. For the families of the victims, for the Moscow community, for the tens of thousands of people who had been following this case since November, this was the moment the abstract became real. What many observers noted about his demeanor in those early court appearances was the stillness. He appeared composed, almost detached. He did not break down. He did not display visible distress. He sat and listened the way someone might sit through a presentation they had already decided not to engage with emotionally. At his arraignment, Kohberger declined to enter a plea. The judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf, and a long legal process began. When someone accused of a crime of this scale walks into a courtroom for the first time, the entire room shifts. The legal formalities are almost secondary to this single, charged moment. The families are there. The community is watching. And for the first time, the accused is no longer just a mugshot. He is a person standing in the same space as the people whose lives he has shattered. Here is that first court appearance.
Oh, we got it. We took care of it. You guys.
$50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life.
Psychologists and legal analysts who observed the case noted that demeanor in a courtroom is a complicated thing. It is shaped by legal strategy, by personal temperament, by the capacity some individuals have to create psychological distance between themselves and the reality of their situation. None of that is evidence, but it is observable. And for the families who sat through those early proceedings, watching that stillness while they were barely keeping themselves together was something many later described as one of the hardest parts of the entire experience. There are two names in this story that belong neither to the victims nor to the accused, but whose lives were changed by that night just as completely. Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk were roommates of the four who were killed. They were in the house. They survived. And what they carried from that night is something that no legal outcome, no sentence, no verdict can fully address. Dylan's account was one of the most critical pieces of the investigation. She had been on the main floor. In the early morning hours, she opened her bedroom door. The second time she opened it, she saw a man. All black clothing, a mask, She described him as tall and athletic with bushy eyebrows visible above the mask. He walked past her in the hallway, moving toward the sliding glass door at the back of the house. She stood frozen, in shock. She watched him pass, close enough to notice the detail she would later describe to investigators. And then the door slid open, and he was gone. She went back to her room. She locked her door. She told investigators she did not fully understand what she had seen in those moments. She did not know what had already happened behind the closed doors above her. Trauma works that way sometimes. It processes experience in fragments rather than complete pictures. The morning arrived. Texts to Kaylee and Madison and Xana went unanswered. Phone calls went to voicemail. And slowly, in pieces, the picture began to form. Bethany Funk was also in that house that night. She also survived. And in the months that followed, she became central not only to the investigation, but to the human story of this case. Because the question of what it means to survive something like this, to live in the aftermath of a night you did not choose, to be asked to remember and report and participate in a legal process while simultaneously managing grief and trauma, is one of the most important and least discussed aspects of a case like this one. Investigators knew that the accounts of the two surviving roommates would be among the most critical pieces of the case. But drawing that testimony out required something beyond legal procedure. It required patience, trust, and an acknowledgement that the people sitting across the table had lived through something that most of us will never face. Here is a piece of that process.
She just knocked on my door, I think, during the last. I had breakfast, and
Okay. Then what happened after that?
I just went to bed, and then I woke up, and I was like half asleep, and I just thought I saw like a firework or something, like it just sparkled like under my door, and then I thought I heard like something kind of fall, and then Murphy barked, but I thought people were just making like food, like and Ethan was here or something, and knocked something over because he's usually loud in the kitchen upstairs.
Okay. So what do you mean by you heard a firework?
It sounded like a little firework, and then there was like a spark. I went by my like I'm on the bottom floor.
Okay.
So it kind of looked like it came down there, but I don't know.
And so is Murphy your dog?
Kaylee's dog.
Kaylee's dog?
Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend's dog.
Okay. So you heard Murphy bark right after you heard what you thought was a firecracker?
Yeah, something like that. Like, I don't know, dogs bark at random things. And sometimes when he's happy, he'll bark.
Okay. It didn't sound like an angry growl or anything like that, just a bark?
I don't really know. I was like half asleep.
Okay.
Just sounded like bark.
So, hear the firework, kind of see a spark underneath the door, Murphy barks. What did you hear after that?
Pretty much nothing. That's it.
Okay. And you thought maybe someone was just in the kitchen at that point?
Yeah, just like someone accidentally fell into the table or something.
Okay.
And she was like, maybe
Do you know about what time that might have been? Do you have any idea?
or something. I tried to call all the at like 4:20ish around that time, and no one was answering. I thought they just went to bed or something.
Okay. What happened after that?
Called me. She said she thinks she saw someone. And I didn't know, like, really what to think of it, because sometimes we think we hear things a lot in the house, but it's usually just Ethan walking around. But she came, I told her to come in my room, and she could sleep with me, and we could lock the door, and just stay in there just in case if there was anything, and that's all I knew. And then I fell back asleep.
You didn't hear anything else? Okay. No one else talking? Okay. Did you make it to your room then? Okay. What time do you think she got in your room?
Like 4:20, 4:30.
Okay, about the same time.
Yeah.
Where's her room located to yours?
I'm the only one on the bottom floor, right by the front door.
Okay.
And then you go up the stairs, and Xana's room, and his room, the kitchen, and then upstairs is mine and Kim's.
Okay. And where's the room?
Right by the kitchen.
Right by the kitchen? Okay. And did she say anything to you when she got into the room?
She said she thought she saw a man, but I didn't know what to think of it. I was like still half asleep, and I was like, I didn't know. I don't know. It didn't sound like I didn't hear screams, I didn't hear anything. I didn't really know.
Okay. But no, so she didn't say anything more than she just saw someone.
That's all I remember.
What the experiences of Dylan and Bethany illustrate is something important about how the justice system functions and what it cost the people at its center. The entire architecture of a criminal prosecution in a case like this one sits at some level on the willingness of people who are themselves victims, who are grieving, frightened, and overwhelmed to come forward, to remember clearly, and to speak. It is an enormous thing to ask, and yet both Dylan and Bethany did it. They cooperated. They gave their accounts. They showed up, and in doing so, they gave the investigation what it needed to move forward. Justice is not a single moment. That is one of the most important and most difficult lessons that the families of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan had to absorb after Kohberger's arrest. It is not the arrest. It is not the charging. It is not even the first appearance. Justice, in a legal sense, is a process, long, slow, procedurally exhausting, and designed not for the comfort of those most affected, but for thoroughness. For the families, that meant years of hearings, years of courtrooms, years of waiting. After the arrest and extradition in early 2023, the case moved through a complex pretrial process. There were hearings about evidence admissibility, motions about what could and could not be mentioned in front of jury, hearings about the 911 call, hearings about the DNA evidence, hearings about the phone records. At one point, attorneys spent court time debating whether the phrase bushy eyebrows could be used when describing a witness's account of what she saw that night. There were hearings about the defense's claim that evidence had been planted. There were hearings about Kohberger's recently disclosed diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and its potential relevance to sentencing. In September 2024, a judge granted a motion for a change of venue. The trial would move from Moscow to Boise, Idaho. Kohberger was transferred south. Jury selection was set to begin in late July 2025, with opening statements scheduled for August. Throughout all of this, a gag order remained in place. Law enforcement officials and attorneys were prohibited from speaking publicly about the details of the case. For the families, this was one of the most frustrating realities of the entire process. They were living at the center of one of the most publicly followed cases in the country, and yet the people with actual knowledge of what was happening in courtrooms in an investigation were largely unable to speak to them or to the public. They had to show up anyway, week after week, hearing after hearing. The legal process in a case like this one moves according to its own schedule, not the schedule of grief. Each status hearing is another milestone on a road that feels impossibly long. But the family showed up to all of them because for them, every single court date was about their children. Here is one of those hearings, a status check in which the case continued its slow, deliberate march towards something that resembled resolution.
Mr. Kohberger is in custody. He is appearing here in court with his attorneys, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Logsdon, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings appearing on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for the preliminary hearing status conference. So I am going to inquire of counsel. Ms. Taylor, what's the status at this time?
Thank you, Your Honor.
The state has no objection to that, Your Honor. And Ms. Taylor reached out to us by email yesterday with her proposal. On reflection, the state's calendar would be better in the month of July, but we will make the end of June work if that's the court's preference. And I haven't had a chance to talk with Ms. Taylor about that. I'm sorry, I know that's last minute.
That's okay. The court's calendar is going to be better towards the end of June, early July. So would that work, Ms. Taylor, for your scheduling on your other matters?
Your Honor, yes. If we take that fourth week in June, that's actually best.
Okay. So, Mr. Kohberger, I need to speak to you for a moment then. Sir, you do understand, and Ms. Taylor, have you had enough time to speak with Ms. Taylor about your decision to waive your right to a speedy preliminary hearing?
Yes.
Do you need any additional time to do so?
No.
Then I will ask at this time, as to the 5 counts, felony counts that were charged in the criminal complaint that was filed on December 29th of 2022. beginning Monday, June 26th at 9:00 a.m. And I will go ahead and reserve the week, so June 26th to June 30th, in the event that we need all 5 days for presentation of evidence. And just so council knows, it will begin at 9 a.m. each of those days. Is there anything further to address at this time in the case, Mr. Thompson?
Not from the state's perspective, Your Honor, no.
All right. Or Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kohberger, then you will be remanded into custody on your same no bail at this point in time, pending further proceedings. Again, we'll send notice out to council, and we will be in recess for this morning.
Thank you.
And then, in the summer of 2025, with a trial that had been years in preparation, just weeks away, something happened that almost no one had publicly anticipated. Bryan Kohberger agreed to plead guilty. On June 30th, 2025, a letter was sent to the victims' families. It told them that a plea deal had been reached. Kohberger would plead guilty to all charges. In exchange, the death penalty would be removed from the table. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, without any possibility of parole. He would waive his right to appeal. For some families, this news provided a measure of relief. For others, it was devastating. Not because of the sentence itself, but because a guilty plea meant no trial. No full public airing of the evidence. No moment where a jury heard every piece of what investigators had assembled. And no legal mechanism that could force Kohberger to provide an explanation. Prosecutor Bill Thompson put it plainly after the sentencing when asked about this. He said the law does not give the court or the prosecution the power to require a defendant to provide a specific factual statement. And then he added something that cut through the legal language entirely. He said that even if such a requirement existed, he did not believe that anything Kohberger would say would be the truth. The families would never hear why. On July 2nd, 2025, Bryan Kohberger appeared in court for his change of plea hearing. One by one, the judge asked him how he pleaded to each charge. For Kaylee Goncalves, for Madison Mogan, for Xana Kernadal, for Ethan Chapin. One by one, Kohberger answered, guilty, 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 guilty. The trial that had been prepared for years never happened. The case moved directly to sentencing, set for July 23rd. In the weeks between plea and sentencing, the families and surviving roommates prepared impact statements. These statements are one of the most powerful elements of the criminal justice process. The moment when the legal framework steps back and acknowledges that the people most affected by a crime have a right to be heard not as legal instruments, not as witnesses, but as human beings, as people who loved and lost, as the ones who will carry this for the rest of their lives. For one of those statements, there was an additional, deeply moving dimension. A statement that was not read by the person who wrote it, but by a friend, because the person who wrote it could not stand at that podium herself. Some grief is too heavy to carry to a podium. Some experiences sit so deep that the act of speaking them aloud in a room full of people with the person responsible sitting just feet away becomes impossible. And so sometimes you hand your words to someone who loves you and you ask them to carry what you cannot carry alone. Here is that moment. A friend standing at a podium in a federal courtroom, speaking words that were not hers to write, but were hers to deliver.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be speaking on behalf of Bethany, and so, yeah, here it reads. My name is Bethany Funk, and I was roommates with Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. I not only lost some of my best friends, but I also lost a sister. Never in a million years would I have thought that something like this would have happened to my closest friends. I thought that we were going to wake up and go upstairs, see them and tell them how they had scared us and that they were going to tease us about how we were constantly scaredy cats and make jokes about it as we would go to Taco Bell like always. But sadly, that is not what happened and what turned out to be my worst nightmare. When I first woke up that morning, I had no idea what happened. I woke up around 7 with a terrible toothache, so I called my dad, who is a dentist, and he asked what I should do. He told me to take Advil, so I did, and I went back to sleep. I was still out of it and still didn't know what happened. If I had known, I of course would have called 911 right away. I still carry so much regret and guilt for not knowing what had happened and not calling right away, even though I understand it wouldn't have changed anything, not even if the paramedics had been right outside the door. I was so frantic that morning and scared to death, not knowing what had happened. And when I made the 911 call, I couldn't even get out the words. And from then on, I don't remember a thing. It was like my brain wiped that whole memory. That was the worst day of my life. And I know it always will be. While I was still in shock, trying to process the fact that my friends were truly gone, I had been attacked by the public. I was grieving, numb, and unsure of what had happened was even real. And at the same time, I was getting flooded with death threats and hateful messages from people who did not know me at all or know the dynamic of our friendship. Social media made it so much worse, and strangers made up stories to entertain themselves. The media harassed not just me, but also my family. People showed up at our house. They called my phone, my parents' phones, other family members' phones, and we were chased while I was still trying to survive emotionally and grieve the loss of my friends. I hated and still hate that they are gone, but for some reason, I am still here and I got to live. I still think about this every day. Why me? Why did I get to live and not them? For the longest time, I could not even look at their families without feeling sick with guilt. I did not know what to say or what to do. I was terrified that my presence just made their pain worse, and I was still here when their kid, their siblings and their friends, their loved ones should have been here instead. After everything happened, I was afraid to go into my own backyard or alone in my house. I was scared that the person who did this would come for me next. I was always scared that the media would try to catch me at any moment of any day, even when I was just walking around my house. I made my parents close all the blinds during the day so no one could see me even in the slightest chance. I barely left the house, and when I did, I made sure I was never alone. I slept in my parents' room for almost a year. I made them double lock every door, set an alarm, and still check everywhere in the room just in case someone was hiding. And I still check my room every night before, and I double lock it. I have not slept through a single night since this happened. I constantly wake up in panics, terrified. Someone is breaking in, or someone is here to hurt me, or I'm about to lose someone else that I love. The fear never really leaves. For a long time, I could barely get out of bed, but one day I realized I have to live for them. They did not get the chance to keep living, but I do, and I will not take that for granted. So now every day I remind myself to live for them, and everything I do it with them in mind. I am still scared to go out in public, but I force myself to do things because I know that they would want me to keep living my life to the fullest. I am beyond blessed to still be here, and I refuse to take that for granted when they did not get a chance. Our house was not just a house, it was a home. It was where we laughed till we couldn't breathe, make meals, did crafts, binge watch reality shows, played games, and spent lazy days on the couch. It was movie nights, wine nights, morning debriefs, pranks, hot chocolate, cookies, and warmth. I will cherish those memories forever, and I will not let what happened erase how special our home was or how much those memories meant to me.
There are no words that fully capture what it means to write something like an impact statement and then hand it to someone else to read. It requires simultaneously acknowledging that you have something important to say and that you cannot say it yourself right now. It is a profound act of both courage and vulnerability. It says, I was there. This is part of my story. I will not be silent. But today, I need someone else to be my voice. When that friend stands at the podium and reads those words about fear and loss and the life that was permanently changed, the room becomes something different from a legal proceeding. It becomes something deeply, irreducibly human. For nearly 3 years, Dylan Mortensen had existed in this case primarily as initials. DM, the surviving roommate referenced in court documents. The woman whose account of a masked man in a hallway had been quoted in legal filings and discussed endlessly in media coverage. Everyone knew something about what she had seen that night. But the person herself, the woman who had lived in that house, who had stood frozen at her door, who had been looking directly at the man as he walked past, had never spoken publicly. Not once. Dylan carried that silence through every hearing, every development, every day of what must have been an almost unbearable wait for the case to reach its conclusion. She described to people close to her what she experienced as tsunami-like panic attacks, waves of distress that came without warning and overwhelmed her completely. She had survived the night, but she carried the weight of it in ways that are hard to fully express. The sentencing hearing on July 23, 2025 was the first time Dylan Mortensen had ever spoken publicly about what she experienced that night. When someone breaks a silence that has lasted years, the room changes. And when that silence has been as public and as significant as this one, when millions of people have followed a case and read about a woman who saw something she could not yet fully understand, the moment that she finally finds her voice is something that transcends the legal proceedings surrounding it. Here is Dylan Mortensen, speaking publicly for the first time.
Next is Dylan Mortensen. We're asking for some accommodations for Ms. Mortensen and that she be allowed to sit in my seat.
Sure. Dylan, just take your time, all right?
Sorry. Thank you, Your Honor. What happened that night changed everything. Because of him, 4 beautiful, genuine, compassionate people were taken from this world for no reason. He didn't just take their lives. He took the light they carried it into every room. He took away how they made everyone feel safe, loved, and full of joy. He took away the ability for me to tell them that I love them and that I'm so proud of them. He took away who they were becoming and the futures they were going to have. He took away birthdays, graduations, celebrations, and all the memories that we were supposed to make. All of it is gone. And all the people who loved them are just left to carry that weight forever. He didn't just take them from the world. He took them from me, my friends, my people who felt like my home. the people I looked up to and adored more than anyone. He took away my ability to trust the world around me. What he did shattered me in places I didn't know could break. I was barely 19 when he did this. We had just celebrated my birthday at the end of September. I should have been figuring out who I was. I should have been having the college experience and starting to establish my future. Instead, I was forced to learn how to survive the unimaginable. I couldn't be alone. I had to sleep in my mom's bed because I was too terrified to close my eyes. Terrified that if I blinked, someone might be there. I made escape plans everywhere I went. If something happens, how do I get out? What can I use to defend myself? Who can help? And then there are the panic attacks. The kind that slam into me like a tsunami out of nowhere. I can't breathe. I can't think. I can't stop shaking. All I can do is scream because the emotional pain and the grief is too much to handle. My chest feels like it's caving in. Sometimes I drop to the floor with my heart racing, convinced something is very wrong. It's far beyond anxiety. It's my body reliving everything over and over again. My nervous system never got the message that it is over, and it won't let me forget what he did to them. People call me strong. They say I'm a survivor, but they don't see what my new reality looks like. They don't see the panic attacks, the hypervigilance, the exhaustion, the way I scan every room I enter, the way I flinch at sudden sounds. They don't know how heavy it is to carry so much pain and still be expected to keep going, and that's because of him. He stole parts of me I may never get back. He took the version of me who didn't constantly ask, what if it happens again? What if next time I don't survive? He may have shattered parts of me, but I'm still putting myself back together. Piece by piece, I'm learning how to live in this new version of life. It is not easy. It hurts, but I'm still trying. Still trying, and I'm not trying just for me. I'm trying for them, my friends. About a year ago, I had a dream about them. I got to say goodbye. I told them I won't be able to see you again, so I need to tell you goodbye. They all kept asking why, and all I could say was, I can't tell you, but I have to. When I woke up, I felt shattered and heartbroken, but also strangely grateful. Like maybe in some way that dream gave us the goodbye we never got. Still, no dream can replace them, and no goodbye will ever feel finished. He is a hollow vessel, something less than human. A body without empathy, without remorse. He chose destruction. He chose evil. He feels nothing. He tried to take everything from me. My friends, my safety, my identity, my future. He took their lives, but I will continue trying to be like them, to make them proud. Living is how I honor them. Speaking today is to help me find some sort of justice for them. And I will never let him take that from me. He may have taken so much from me, but he will never get to take my voice. He will never take the memories I had with them. He will never erase the love we shared, the laughs we had, or the way they made me feel seen and whole. Those things are mine. They are sacred, and he will never touch them. I get to feel sadness. I get to feel rage. I get to feel joy even when it's hard. I get to feel love even when it hurts. I get to live. And while I will still live with this pain, at least I get to live my life. He will stay here, empty, forgotten, and powerless.
Dylan, thank you so much for your courage.
Dylan stood at the podium and spoke through tears. She described the panic attacks. She described the way that night had restructured her daily existence in ways that are nearly impossible to quantify. She was composed when she needed to be and emotional when she could not help it. And when she finished, someone came forward and held her. She had done it. After 3 years of silence, she had walked into that courtroom. The same legal process that had taken so long, that had demanded so much from so many people. And she had spoken. That moment was not lost on anyone in the room. When Olivia Goncalves approached the podium at the sentencing hearing, she was not there to be gentle. She looked directly at Bryan Kohberger. She did not look away. She spoke clearly and without hesitation. She told him that no one in that room was scared of him. No one was impressed by him. No one thought he was important. And she called him a sociopath to his face in a courtroom full of people with cameras recording every word. Kohberger maintained eye contact with her as she spoke. He showed no visible reaction. When Olivia finished, the courtroom applauded. A sister stands between her grief and the man she holds responsible for the death of her sibling. What she chooses to say in that moment, the words she selects, the composure she maintains, the message she delivers, tells you everything about who she is and about who her sister was. This is what strength looks like in the aftermath of devastating loss. This is a sister who refused to be small.
Hello, I'd like to start by thanking the court for allowing me the time and opportunity to speak today. My name is Olivia, and I'm the big sister of Kaylee Gonzalez, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogan as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief, I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be. Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would. That I would fight for them. That I would show up, no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them. And not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance. If I could gather enough heartbreak or love or sacrifice or whatever it took to get just one message across. What would I say? Throughout this entire process, I've written my feelings down at every moment. My wishes, my love, my denial, my anger. And as one final act of love, I'd planned to read these thoughts, even jarring and discombobulating and not even making sense. Because for me, that was true love. As bare and as naked as it could be, not laced in pretty words or dressed for the occasion, but written through bleary eyes at 2 a.m. with clenched fists, angry at this reality. My true final act of love was to continue on without them, for them. That dream to read aloud my love to them, to bring meaning through pain, was the latest blow in realizing you don't deserve it. And Kaylee and Maddie don't need it. Haley and Maddie have always known my love, and they would never ask me to prove it by further victimizing myself to a defendant who has shown no guilt, no remorse, no apprehension. They would say to me, "Why would you give the satisfaction of showing vulnerability now? You promised you would never back down." And for that clarity, I'm thankful. I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast. Instead, I will call you what you are. Sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows? Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card? How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime.
Her statement was followed by others from the Goncalves family. Her father, Steve Goncalves, turned the podium toward Kohberger and addressed him directly. He told him that today they were there to finish what he had started. He pointed out something powerful and deliberate, that through everything, through all the media coverage, all the court dates, all the years of attention this case had received, all anyone had really talked about was Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan. Not him. The four young people whose lives were taken remain the center of this story, not the person who took them. Kaylee's mother, Christy Goncalves, also spoke. And in what may be the most raw and memorable lines spoken in that entire proceeding, she told the courtroom that if Kohberger had not attacked those students the way he did, in their sleep, without warning, Kaylee would have fought back hard. Only a mother who knew her daughter's spirit completely could say something like that. And only a room full of people who had spent years following this case could fully understand the weight of it. But here is something you need to hold on to as we move into the final chapters of this story. There is a detail about the crime scene, a detail confirmed by investigators after the sentencing, that has never stopped haunting this case. The murder weapon has never been found. The knife whose sheath was left at the scene, the sheath that carried Kohberger's DNA, the sheath that became the foundation of the entire case against him, was never recovered. Investigators said they searched extensively. They used every resource available. The weapon itself, the most direct physical link to the act at the center of this case, has simply never turned up. And in the same breath that investigators confirmed the weapon was never found, they confirmed something else. Despite 3 years, 15,000 tips, and the full resources of local, state, and federal law enforcement, They never found a motive. No connection between Kohberger and any of the 4 victims was ever established. No reason for why he chose the house, those people that night. Both of these questions, the weapon and the why, remain unanswered. Among all the statements delivered at the sentencing hearing, there was one that carried a particular and quiet devastation. Benjamin Mogan, the father of Madison Mogan, took his turn at the podium. Madison had been 21 years old. She and Kaylee Goncalves had been best friends since they were 11. They had grown up together, gone to the same university, lived in the same house, and they had died in the same room. Ben Mogan stood before the court and spoke about his daughter. He told them something that carries its own specific kind of heartbreak. At the time Madison was killed, she had already completed all the credits necessary to finish her degree. She had done the work. She had fulfilled every requirement. The diploma was essentially hers. He wiped his eyes as he spoke. He talked about his daughter in the past tense. He described what it means to stand in a courtroom and do that, to speak about someone you love as someone who no longer exists, in front of a judge, in front of attorneys, in front of cameras, in front of the person responsible. No parent is ever supposed to stand in a room like that. And yet he stood there. He spoke clearly, and he said her name. There are moments in a case like this one where the law becomes secondary to something far more essential. The simple, devastating act of a parent acknowledging what they have lost. Benjamin Mogan could have said 1,000 things standing at that podium. What he chose to say, and how he chose to say it, speaks to who his daughter was, and to who he is. Here is a father speaking about his child.
Now it's Ben Mogan, Maddie Mogan's father.
I'm Benjamin Mogan. I'm Maddie's dad. And first I just want to say thanks to all the people that helped bring this all to a close. I know it's not the resolution that everyone wanted, but I think that that everyone worked so hard, and we really appreciate all their efforts. It was such a hard thing to go through for everybody. Maddie was my only child that I ever had. She's the only great thing I ever really did, and the only thing I was really ever proud of. And I thought we would have the rest of our lives together to be together and to know each other, and I took for granted the times she was in college, and I thought, oh well, we'll have the rest of our lives to do all the stuff that we're supposed to do, and she was just about done. She actually earned all of her credits for her college degree, and Karen and Scotty and I got to go and get her diploma that she actually earned, and she deserved every bit of that. And but I thought that was going to be just the beginning of a long life together, and we never got that. Karen and Scotty did such a great job raising her after Karen and I split up, and I'm so thankful for Scotty and the role that he played in her life when I wasn't able to. But we got to spend a lot of great times together, Maddie and I. she was my favorite person to go to a concert with. We got to see some fun shows together, and I told her if there's ever a show that you want to go to, let me know, and I'll get you tickets for you and your friend, or if we want to go together, we'll make it happen. And my favorite memory with her was when the Mac Miller show sold out here in Spokane, and everyone wanted tickets, no one could get them, and on the last day before the show, they did a radio thing, and I got 4 meet and greet tickets for Maddie and her friends, and me to go and see the show, and that was her favorite artist at the time, was Mac Miller, and he's gone now too, and my little cousin Zach drove us all there that night, and he's gone too, tragically, and anyway, the last thing that she ever wrote to me was this Father's Day card, and I'm so glad I still have it. I'm just going to read what she said. It says, "Happy Father's Day. I hope you have the best day. I can't wait till we can hang out again soon. I'll be in Coeur d'Alene 6:24 to 7:4. Hopefully we can find a time then. I love your birthday card that you sent me, by the way. Maybe we can see a concert sometime soon. I'd love to see the gorge when it's not so smoky out. I hope you're doing well. I'm proud of how far you've come. Thank you for always encouraging me to do my best. Love you lots and lots. Love, Maddie Mae." She did encourage me to not just to do my best, but to live on. I went through a lot of issues with addiction and with substance abuse, and when I wasn't wanting to live anymore, she was what would keep me from just not caring anymore, and knowing that she was out there and that she was just such a beautiful person kept me alive a lot of rough moments, and I'm so glad that she was able to meet Jake. He was the only one that I actually ever got to take her to the gorge. They went and saw Watershed together, and they had a heck of a time. I'm just glad she got to. That's a really special place for me, and she always wanted to work out there with me in the summer sometime. She never got to, but at least she got to see it once with Jake. He was such a great guy. He is such a great guy. And I really wanted to see what a future with them would have looked like. I'll never be able to replace her. I wrote a bunch of stuff. I just don't know what to say right now. I just miss her so much, and I just love her more than anything. And this shouldn't have happened. And a death sentence is one thing. When it's going to happen, and it's going to be all gentle and stuff. But, life without parole, with a building full of people that all just want you to not be around anymore, and winking at every morning, not knowing if that's the day they're going to pull your card. I mean, it's not a very nice sentence either. So, I don't know. I just love you, Maddie, and I wish you were still here.
The Kernodle family also spoke. Jasmine Kernodle remembered her younger sister Xana as kind and funny, as someone who was everyone's best friend. Their father, Jeff Kernodle, revealed something painfully personal, that on the night of the murders, he had been only 7 miles from the house. He had thought about driving over that night. He had decided not to because he had been drinking. He would carry that knowledge forever. It is not a burden he chose. It is simply a thing he must live with. The family of Ethan Chapin described his absence as a daily battle against darkness, the particular weight of losing someone whose greatest gift was lightness. And Xana's aunt, Kim Kernadle, said something that surprised many people in that room. She told Kohberger that she had forgiven him, that she could no longer carry the weight of hatred, that if he ever wanted to talk, truly talk, she would be there without judgment. The courtroom on July 23rd held all of it, the rage, the grief, the resolve, and in one extraordinary moment, forgiveness. Human beings do not grieve the same way. They do not need the same things from a moment like this. And the full breadth of what was said that day is a testament to the complexity of what these families have had to navigate and what they have somehow survived. After more than 3 hours of impact statements, after more than a dozen families and individuals had spoken their truth into that courtroom in Boise, the moment arrived. Bryan Kohberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. 1 sentence for each victim. For Kaylee Goncalves, for Madison Mogen, for Xana Kernadle, for Ethan Chapin. An additional fixed 10 years for the burglary charge, his unlawful entry into that house with the intent to cause harm, and $270,000 in fines and civil penalties. Under Idaho law, these are fixed sentences. There is no parole mechanism. There is no early release. Bryan Kohberger will die in a maximum security prison in Kuna, Idaho. He will never again see the outside of a cell. The judge acknowledged something honestly and directly in his remarks. He noted that Kohberger's motive may never be known, that despite everything the investigation had uncovered, the DNA, the phone data, the surveillance footage, the knife sheath, the browsing history, the answer to the most fundamental question in this case had not been established. The law does not require a proven motive for a conviction. The evidence was sufficient. The plea was entered. The sentence would stand. After it was all concluded, after the families had spoken and the judge had ruled, Kohberger was given the opportunity to speak. The standard legal moment offered to every defendant. The chance to say something, to explain, to acknowledge, to look the families in the eye and give them any version of the answer they had been waiting for. He respectfully declined. Everything in this story, the investigation, the hearings, the years of waiting, the testimonies, the grief, led to this single moment in a courtroom in Boise, Idaho on July 23rd, 2025. Here is the sentencing of Bryan Kohberger.
All right, does the defense have evidence to present today?
No evidence.
All right. Defense wish to make argument today.
Runner, we do not wish to make arguments. Mr. Kohberger, along with his legal team, is prepared for the court to enter judgment.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, you have an opportunity to make a statement if you wish to. I take it you are declining.
I respectfully decline.
Go. Please. All right, let me start this morning by acknowledging and thanking those that have come here today in support of their loved ones, and I appreciate your courage and your strength. And I hope that you are able to move on as best as possible. Thank counsel for the professionalism that they've exhibited throughout this case. It has been my great honor to preside in this case and to help bring, to the extent possible, some resolution and hopefully justice to this case. During the quiet morning hours of November 13, 2022, a faceless coward breached the tranquility of 6 beautiful young people and senselessly slaughtered them, 4 of them. Who committed this unspeakable evil was unknown for several weeks, but due to the killer's incompetence and outstanding police work by numerous local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. The person that slithered through that sliding glass door at 1122 King Road now stands before the world and this court unmasked. This unfathomable and senseless act of evil has caused immeasurable pain and loss. No parent should ever have to bury their child. This is the greatest tragedy that can be inflicted upon a person. Parents who took their children to college in a truck filled with moving boxes had to bring them home in hearses lined with coffins. The loss this killer inflicted was not just the death of these people's children, siblings, grandchildren, as we've heard today. It has ripped a hole in their soul, destroying a special part of their very essence. Any person who is a parent defines themselves foremost as such. It is their existence and purpose of being. And it has been stolen from these parents. None of us have experienced the loss these victims have in the unspeakable way that they have. And therefore, none of us can, nor should we, question the way in which they have handled their loss. Whether that be in private mourning, removed as far as possible from this media circus, or in front of a camera demanding retribution with the loudest megaphone. I've listened intently to the stories and pain that have been shared today, with great awe at the courage and resilience of the surviving family members of those wonderful children. I've listened also to the surviving roommates, both in person and through their friends. And I can't think of how, frankly, courageous they have been despite the hell that they have faced by uncaring people who have come up with all kinds of crazy theories about two kids simply being kids. The parents, siblings, and other family members who have spoken today are designated as victims in our legal system. But going forward, I hope that they can shed that label, as it gives too much power to the evil that condemned them to that role. They are and should be known as survivors, fighters, and foremost as witnesses to the tremendous lives of value and unbounded promise of these four young people. But those speaking today and those who did not speak, but who carry the same burden, this same loss, now carry forward the memories of these now perpetually young people, these forever children. These survivors carry the responsibility of ensuring that the voices of these children, Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, are never forgotten, and the positive impacts that they have had on so many lives are never minimized, and that the love they shared, the light that they shined onto others is forever celebrated. As we sit here today, this case is ending, and we are now certain who committed these unspeakable acts of evil, but we don't know, and what we may never know is why. I share the desire expressed by others to understand the why. But upon reflection, it seems to me, and this is just my own opinion, that by continuing to focus on why, we continue to give Mr. Kohberger relevance. We give him agency and we give him power. The need to know what is inherently not understandable makes us dependent upon the defendant to provide us with a reason, and that gives him the spotlight, the attention, and the power he appears to crave. Yet even if I could force him to speak, which legally I cannot, how could anyone ever be assured that what he speaks is the truth? Do we really believe, After all of this, he's capable of speaking the truth or of giving up something of himself to help the very people whose lives he destroyed. Rather, I suspect the so-called reason would be dished out in enticing, self-serving, and aggrandizing, untruthful bits, leaving people wanting more information, more insight, and thus enhancing even further the power he seeks to hold. Even if we could get truthful insight into his why, I suspect it would not in any way quench one's thirst for actually understanding why in the first instance.
After the sentencing, Moscow police held a press conference and began releasing hundreds of previously sealed investigative documents. New details emerged. Kohberger's classmates described him as intelligent but isolated. One student from his class recognized photos of herself on his phone while watching a documentary about the case. Photos she believed had been taken from her public Instagram account without her knowledge. A former friend noted that after the murders, Kohberger had started talking more than usual, describing his conversations as those of someone who wanted to vent. The same friend said that when he'd previously asked Kohberger about the scratches on his face and the wounds on his knuckles, Kohberger had attributed them to a car accident. Investigators also confirmed that when they first interviewed Kohberger at the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks on the day of his arrest, he had mentioned casually that he had received a phone alert about a killing in Moscow, Idaho. He said this almost in passing before asking for a lawyer. He was studying criminal decision-making. He knew how investigations work. He had wiped his devices. He had been calm during 2 traffic stops. He had been calm in the kitchen wearing gloves when they came to arrest him. He had been calm in the barracks. He had been calm in every courtroom. And at the end of it all, when given the opportunity to speak, he was calm in his silence. There are people who watch this case and ask, what does that mean? What does that level of composure say about who this person is? Is it strategy, or is it something deeper? A psychological distance from what he did? An inability or unwillingness to engage emotionally with the consequences of his actions? Nobody can answer that with certainty. And that uncertainty, that fundamental inability to understand why or how, may be the most unsettling legacy of this entire case. So we return to the question we started with, the one that has never been answered. Why? Why did a doctoral student in criminal justice, someone who had spent years studying how crimes are committed and how perpetrators are caught, walk into a house on King Road in Moscow, Idaho, in the early hours of November 13th, 2022, and take 4 lives? Why was it that house? Why those 4 people? Why that specific night in a town where nothing like this had happened in 7 years? The investigators said it clearly. Law enforcement said it clearly. The judge said it clearly. The answer, if one exists, lives in the mind of Bryan Kohberger. And he chose not to share it. Not at arraignment. Not at the plea. Not at sentencing. Not a single word of explanation across 3 years of legal proceedings. What does that silence mean to you? Sit with that question, because I think the answer you arrive at says something important about how we understand not just this case, but what we expect from a justice system, and what justice, in its truest form, can actually deliver. What we do know is this. Kaylee Goncalves was 21 years old. She was a fiercely loyal person who had chosen the same best friend for a decade and never let go. Madison Mogen was 21 years old. She had already completed her degree. She was ready for what came next. Xana Kernadle was 20 years old. She was kind and funny, and according to everyone who knew her, the kind of person you just naturally gravitated toward. And Ethan Chapin was 20 years old. He was a freshman. He brought lightness in every room he entered. He rarely took himself too seriously, and that quality, the ability to make the people around you feel at ease just by being present, is rarer and more valuable than most people ever acknowledge. All 4 of them deserved to see what came next. All 4 of them had every reason to be standing here, in the future that was supposed to be theirs, living lives that were entirely and completely their own. And they are not. That is the truth at the center of this case. Not the DNA evidence. Not the knife sheath. Not the white car caught on surveillance cameras passing a house on a quiet street again and again. The wound at the center of everything is simply this. For people who should be here are not. And the person responsible has chosen silence as his final answer. Bryan Kohberger will spend the rest of his natural life in a maximum security prison in Idaho. The law has spoken, and its judgment is permanent. But for the families of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan, and for Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, who were in that house and survived, and have had to rebuild their lives around the shape of what was lost, there is no verdict that closes everything. There is no sentence that fills the space left behind. There is only the ongoing, daily act of continuing to live, of saying their names, of refusing to let this story collapse into the notoriety of the person who caused the harm rather than the humanity of the people who were lost. That is what the families asked for throughout this entire ordeal. And that is what we owe them. This has been Dark Trail Files. If this story reached you, if you found yourself needing to understand every detail, to sit with the questions that don't have clean answers, to honor the 4 people at the center of this tragedy by knowing their story fully, then you already understand what this channel is here for. We go deep. We go careful. We follow the trail wherever it leads. Subscribe to Dark Trail Files and turn on your notifications. Because the cases that matter most are rarely the ones that resolve cleanly. They're the ones that stay with you. Dark Trail Files. The truth always leaves a trail.